Welcome, dear listener, to another evening of intrigue and intellect. If you're settling in with a cup of something warm, or perhaps a cold beer like I prefer, you're in the right place. This is Archie Goodwin, reporting from the brownstone on West 35th Street, where the great Nero Wolfe holds court. Tonight's tale? Fatal note in the opera programme. Pull up a chair, we've got murder, music and a puzzle that'll keep you guessing. And hey, in the comments below tell me, what's your favourite time period for a mystery? 1940s classic like this one, modern day, or Victorian? Chapter 1. The Curtain Rises. It was October 1944 and New York City buzzed with the restless energy of a world inching toward the end of war. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of roasted chestnuts from street vendors and the faint tang of gasoline from taxis weaving through Manhattan's arteries. The war had rationed a lot: sugar, tires, optimism, but it couldn't dim the glow of the Metropolitan Opera House, where the elite gathered to forget their troubles under Puccini's spell. Tonight, it was Tosca, a tale of passion and betrayal that, unbeknownst to us, would soon mirror a real tragedy. Nero Wolfe, my employer, confidant and occasional dictator, had pried himself from his orchid-filled sanctuary atop our brownstone for one reason: opera. Wolfe's love for music rivaled his love for food, which is saying something for a man who tips the scales at 1/7 of a ton. Picture him, a mountain of intellect clad in a custom-tailored yellow shirt and a brown suit that could have funded a small nation. His face, broad and impassive, hid a mind sharper than a razor. "Archie," he'd said that morning over Fritz's bacon and brioche. "Tosca demands attendance. Madame Elena Voss as Floria Tosca. She is unparalleled." Emphasis on unparalleled with a reverent tone. I didn't argue. When Wolfe's in love with a soprano, you nod and pack the car. I'm Archie Goodwin, by the way, Wolfe's right hand, legman, and the guy who keeps the operation humming. 30-something, fond of a sharp suit and a sharper quip, I'm the one who does the running while Wolfe sits and thinks. That night I wore my best grey pinstripe, polished shoes reflecting the Met's chandeliers. My job? Keep Wolfe comfortable, scout the scene, and occasionally charm a lead or two. The opera house was a spectacle: velvet curtains, gold leaf on the balconies, and a crowd dripping with furs and diamonds. The war might have pinched the city, but here, wealth still strutted. We settled into Wolfe's custom seat, built to accommodate his, generous frame, in a private box stage left. Wolfe clutched his opera programme like a sacred text, his eyes scanning the cast list. "Elena Voss," he murmured, "a voice to stir the soul. And the orchestra, note the conductor, Archie, Maestro Giovanni Bellini, pronunciation Bellini, precision itself." I nodded, more interested in the crowd. Society dames in glittering gowns, men in tuxedos puffing cigars, and a few soldiers on leave, their uniforms a stark reminder of the world outside. I spotted a few familiar faces: a Wall Street tycoon, a Broadway actress, and, curiously, Inspector Kramer of Homicide, looking out of place in a rented tux. "What's Kramer doing here?" I muttered. Wolfe waved a dismissive hand, likely escaping his wife's cooking. The lights dimmed, and Tosca began. Voss's voice soared, cutting through the theatre like a blade of light. Even I, no opera buff, felt the hairs on my neck rise. Wolfe was entranced, his eyes half closed, a rare smile tugging at his lips. But as Act 1 reached its crescendo, a ripple of unease broke the spell. Whispers from the boxes nearby, a muffled commotion. I leaned over the railing, catching sight of ushers scurrying toward a box across the theatre. "Trouble," I said, nudging Wolfe. He grunted, reluctant to tear his eyes from the stage. Intermission hit like a gunshot. The house lights rose and the lobby became a sea of chatter. I caught fragments as I wove through the crowd, fetching Wolfe's contraband beer, smuggled in a thermos naturally. "Collapsed, dead. Poison, they say." The hairs on my neck were at attention again. I grabbed a passing usher, a kid with a nervous tick. "What's the scuttlebutt?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Mr. Reginald Hargrove, sir, big shot importer, found in his box stone dead. They're saying murder." Back at Wolfe's side, I relayed the news. Hargrove, a man whose name carried weight in shipping and trade, wasn't just dead, he was a spectacle. Poisoned, likely cyanide, judging by the speed and the faint almond-like scent reported by a brave usher. In his hand, clutched like a lifeline, was his opera programme, a note scrawled inside in jagged ink. The final act ends tonight. Betrayer. Pause. For dramatic effect, slow and ominous tone on betrayer. Wolfe's eyes, usually half-lidded in disdain, snapped open. Curious, he said, sipping his beer. A message of vengeance, Archie. Personal, intimate. I raised an eyebrow. Or a stage prop for a killer with flair. Before Wolfe could retort, Inspector Kramer loomed into our box, his cigar a smouldering accusation. Wolfe, you're here when a man drops dead? Convenient. His voice was gravel, his face redder than usual. What do you know? Wolfe leaned back, unruffled. Nothing yet, Inspector, but perhaps everything soon. Emphasis on everything with a smug drawl. Kramer snorted, muttered something about armchair detectives, miss, and stormed off to corral witnesses. I watched him go, my mind racing. Hargrove's death wasn't random. Poison takes planning, and that note screamed intent. But who was the betrayer? A business rival? A scorned lover? Or something darker tied to the war's underbelly? The lobby buzzed with theories. I overheard a dowager in pearls whisper about Hargrove's shady deals, rumours of black market imports, maybe even espionage. Another voice, a young soprano, hinted at a feud with Eleanor Voss herself. He promised her the world, she said, then yanked it away. I filed it all away, my notebook itching for action. Wolfe, meanwhile, flipped through his programme again, pausing at the cast list. Archie, he said, arrange a meeting with Madame Voss tomorrow, and Mr. Hargrove's associates. We shall see what discord lies beneath this harmony. As the bell signalled Act 2, I lingered at the box's edge, scanning the crowd. A woman in a green dress, Hargrove's niece, I'd later learn, clutched her own programme, her face pale. A man with a pencil moustache, later identified as Hargrove's partner, Victor Lang, pronunciation Lang rhymes with song, slipped out a side door, his gait too quick. Clues or shadows? Only Wolfe's brain could sort them. Chapter 2. Suspects in the spotlight. The morning after Hargrove's curtain call, the brownstone was a haven of order amid Manhattan's chaos. Fritz Brenner, Wolfe's chef and the wizard behind our breakfast table, had outdone himself. Eggs poached to perfection, sausages spiced just right, and coffee strong enough to wake a coma patient. I sat across from Wolfe in the dining room, my notebook open, while he savoured his meal with the reverence of a monk at prayer. The New York Times lay folded beside him, its headline screaming, "Importer, slain at Met, poison suspected." Wolfe, unimpressed by the press, dabbed his lips with a napkin. "Archie," he said, his voice a low rumble, "the note is the key. Betrayer suggests intimacy, a wound deeper than business." Emphasis on intimacy with a measured, thoughtful tone. I nodded, jotting notes. The facts were stark. Reginald Hargrove, 52, importer of luxury goods, had collapsed during Tosca's intermission, cyanide in his champagne flute. The note, scrawled on a torn scrap matching the opera programme's paper, hinted at vengeance. Inspector Kramer's boys were combing the Met, but Wolfe preferred his armchair to their legwork. "Assemble the players, Archie," he instructed, gesturing toward the office. "We begin with Madame Voss. Eleanor Voss, pronunciation Voss, like boss with a V. The prima donna who'd set the stage ablaze as Tosca arrived at 11 sharp. She swept in like a storm, her fur stole trailing like a royal train, her dark eyes flashing with Italian fire tempered by New York polish. At 35, she was a vision, raven hair, lips red as a warning. "Mr. Wolfe," she said, settling into the red leather chair, "Reginald Hargrove was my patron." Emphasis on patron with a hint of irony. "He funded my European tour, or promised to. Last week he withdrew his support. A betrayal? Perhaps he was the betrayer?" Her alibi was ironclad. On stage during Act 1 under the spotlight, but a stagehand, a wiry kid named Tommy, had whispered to me at the Met. Voss slipped backstage during a scene change near the refreshment stand where Hargrove's champagne was poured. Coincidence? Or our first clue? Next up was Victor Lang. Pronunciation Lang. Rhymes with song. Hargrove's business partner. He sauntered in at noon, a slick number in a tailored suit, his pencil moustache twitching like a nervous cat's whisker. At 40, Lang had the charm of a used car salesman and the nerves to match. "Reginald owed me a fortune," he admitted, fidgeting under Wolfe's gaze. "A botched import deal, South American antiquities gone sour. But murder? Preposterous. Emphasis on preposterous with a defensive snap. His alibi, mingling in the lobby during intermission, vouched for by a bartender. Yet, my legwork uncovered a wrinkle. A police report noted cyanide traces in Lang's glove compartment, explained away as pest control for his warehouse. A red herring or a smoking gun. Then came Lydia Hargrove, the victim's niece, at 22 the picture of an ingenue, with wide blue eyes and a tremble in her voice. She perched on the chair's edge, clutching a handkerchief. "Uncle Reginald was cruel," she said, tears brimming. "He cut me from his will after I eloped with Eddie, my musician. He called it betrayal." Emphasis on cruel with a quaver. She'd been in the audience, row 12, program in hand, her eyes on the stage, or so she claimed. But a usher recalled her leaving her seat just before intermission, heading toward the boxes. Motive? Plenty. Opportunity? Maybe. Wolfe listened, his eyes half closed, fingers steepled like a cathedral. Between interviews, I relayed my findings from the Met. A smudged fingerprint on Hargrove's program, not yet matched. A pearl earring dropped near his box, unclaimed. And a curious detail from the bartender. Hargrove's champagne flute had been refilled mid-act, unusual for a private box. Wolfe's lips twitched. "The note, Archie. It's paper. Examine its origin. And the earring, trace it." I nodded, already planning a trip to a Fifth Avenue jeweller. By afternoon, the brownstone hummed with tension. I stepped onto the stoop for a breather, the city's pulse, honking taxis, newsboys hawking papers, grounding me. That's when I noticed a shadow across the street. A figure in a fedora watching. Too quick to catch, he melted into the crowd. A tale? Or my imagination stirred by wartime paranoia? Back inside, Wolfe was rereading the Times article, pausing at a line about Hargrove's imports. "Curious," he murmured. "His business, antiquities, yes, but whispers of wartime smuggling, black market goods, perhaps secrets, a motive beyond the personal?" I leaned forward. "You think the betrayer note ties to espionage?" Wolfe's eyes gleamed. "Possibly, or a clever mask for simpler sins. Greed, love, revenge." Pause. The plot thickened, dear listener, like one of Fritz's sauces. Was the killer among our trio, Voss, Lang, Lydia, or someone lurking in the wings? I had my suspicions, but Wolfe's brain was the real stage. Speaking of suspicions, here's your cue. Which suspect's story smells fishiest? Voss's backstage slip, Lang's cyanide stash, or Lydia's tearful tale? Drop your pick in the comments and tell me, what clue would you chase first? The fingerprint, the earring, or that odd champagne refill? Scene transition, rising violin tension, fading to a single, lingering note. Chapter 3. Clues and Shadows. The investigation was picking up steam, like a subway train rattling through Manhattan's underbelly. By the second day, the brownstone's office smelled of Wolfe's Turkish coffee and my own sweat from pounding the pavements. Nero Wolfe, ensconced in his oversized chair, was sifting through the facts like a prospector panning for gold. "Archie," he said, his voice a low growl, "the note's paper is our lodestar. Its rarity points to intent." Emphasis on lodestar with a deliberate, weighty tone. I'd already tracked the program's stock to a specialty shop on Fifth Avenue, a lead that promised answers, or more questions. My morning started at the Met, where the air still held the ghost of Tosca's drama. The stagehand, Tommy, was sweeping the orchestra pit, his eyes darting like a man expecting trouble. "Mr. Goodwin," he whispered. "I saw Madame Voss backstage during that scene change near the refreshment cart. She was furious, muttering about Hargrove." Emphasis on furious with a hushed urgency. I pressed him. Had she touched the champagne? He shook his head, uncertain, but added a tidbit. A man in a fedora had been loitering near Hargrove's box before the show, carrying a program. The same shadow I'd spotted outside the brownstone? My gut said yes. Next, I tailed Victor Lang to his warehouse in Hell's Kitchen, a cavernous place reeking of damp wood and secrets. Lang was barking orders at dockworkers, his moustache twitching like a telegraph. I played the friendly snoop, asking about his pest control cyanide. "Routine," he snapped, but his hands shook as he lit a cigarette. A dockworker, loosening up over a shared coffee, let slip that Lang and Hargrove had argued days before. Something about a botched shipment tied to wartime restrictions. Smuggling, maybe? I found a crate in the back stamped with a faint South American seal, half hidden under a tarp. A clue or a distraction? Lydia Hargrove was harder to pin down. I caught her at a Greenwich Village cafe sipping tea with her musician beau, Eddie Malone. Pronunciation Malone, like a loan with an M. Eddie was a lean type with slicked back hair and a rap sheet. Petty theft, including a stint at a pharmacy where poisons were stocked. Lydia's eyes were red-rimmed, her story unchanged. Uncle cut me off for loving Eddie. He called us traitors. Emphasis on traitors with a bitter edge. But Eddie's alibi was shaky. He'd been rehearsing during the opera, yet no bandmates could confirm it. And Lydia? Her coat pocket held a torn ticket stub marked with a faint ink smudge, like the notes. Innocent or a slip-up. Back at the brownstone I laid out the hall for Wolfe, the stagehand's tip on Voss, Lang's shady crate, Eddie's record, and Lydia's stub. Wolfe's eyes narrowed as he examined Hargrove's opera programme under a magnifying glass. "The paper," he said, "is from a limited run, sold only at Grayson's on 5th. I'd visited Grayson's, a dusty shop where the clerk recalled a buyer in a fedora, possibly Lang, though he couldn't swear to it. But here's the kicker. The clerk mentioned a woman buying programmes too, her pearl earring catching the light. Lydia's earring lost near Hargrove's box was pearl. Coincidence. Wolfe didn't believe in them. The note's ink, Wolfe continued, matches a rare brand, imported, likely pre-war. That sent me to a stationer's, where I learned only a handful of clients bought it, including a theatre supplier linked to the Met, a lead to Voss's circle, or another shadow. As I left the shop, a black sedan idled across the street, its driver obscured, the same fedora-wearing watcher. I ducked into an alley, heart pounding, but the car vanished into the dusk. Pause. Trouble was closing in, dear listener, and I wasn't sure if I was hunter or prey. Evening settled over the brownstone like a fog over the East River. Wolfe, sipping beer, mused aloud. The betrayer? Hargrove? Or his killer? The note suggests a personal wound, yet the cyanide speaks of calculation. I tossed out a theory. What if it's bigger? Hargrove's imports, black market deals, maybe wartime secrets. That crate at Lang's warehouse had a military stamp. Wolfe's lips twitched, a rare sign of approval. Pursue it, Archie, and the earring, its owner holds a piece of the puzzle. Inspector Kramer barged in just then, his cigar trailing smoke like a steam engine. "Wolfe, you're stalling," he barked. "I've got Voss's fingerprints on a programme, Lang's cyanide, and Lydia's sob story. Give me something." Wolfe leaned back, unruffled. "Patience, Inspector. The stage is set, but the players conceal their lines." Pause. Kramer stormed out, muttering about armchair geniuses, but I caught his glance at the programme on Wolfe's desk. Did he see what we did? As night fell, I stepped outside to clear my head. The city's pulse, sirens, laughter, a distant trumpet mixing with my thoughts. That's when I found it. A crumpled note slipped under the brownstone's door. "Back off, Goodwin," it read, in the same jagged scrawl as Hargrove's. Pause a warning, or a trap. The plot was thickening, and I had a feeling the final act was closer than we thought. Here's your moment, dear. Listener. That crumpled note. Who slipped it under the door? Voss, protecting her secrets? Lang, hiding his deals? Or someone new, watching from the wings? And what's your next move? Chase the fedora, the earring, or that crate? Drop your theory in the comments, and let's see if you're outsmarting Wolfe himself. Scene transition. Ominous cello chord, fading to silence. Chapter 4. The Gathering Storm. By the third day, the brownstone felt like a pressure cooker, the air thick with Wolfe's Turkish coffee and the weight of an unsolved murder. Nero Wolfe, planted in his yellow armchair like a monarch, was piecing together the puzzle of Reginald Hargrove's death. Cyanide in the champagne, a cryptic note calling him betrayer, and a cast of suspects with motives as tangled as a Broadway plot. "Archie," Wolfe rumbled, "the note's purpose is deception. Its placement, post-mortem, is the key." Emphasis on post-mortem with a slow, deliberate tone. I nodded, my notebook brimming with leads. Voss's backstage slip, Lang's shady warehouse, Lydia's ticket stub, and that pearl earring near Hargrove's box. I'd spent the morning chasing the ink trail, The stationer on Fifth Avenue confirmed the note's rare, pre-war ink was sold to a theatre supplier tied to the Met. A call to Saul Panzer, our best operative, revealed the supplier's client list included Eleanor Voss's manager. A lover's quarrel turned deadly? I wasn't sold, but I filed it away. Then, a trip to the jeweller confirmed the pearl earring belonged to Lydia Hargrove, dropped, she claimed, during a pre-show visit to her uncle's box. Innocent, or a careless clue? The fedora-wearing shadow from yesterday still nagged me, but he'd vanished like smoke in the city's alleys. Midday, I hit Hell's Kitchen again, tailing Victor Lang. Pronunciation Lang, rhymes with song. His warehouse was a fortress of crates, one stamped with that South American seal, possibly wartime contraband. I slipped inside, dodging a surly guard, and found a ledger tucked in Lang's office. It listed shipments Hargrove had blocked, costing Lang a fortune. Motive? Check. But as I left, a black sedan peeled out nearby, its driver obscured. The same car from the stationer's? My pulse quickened. I was being watched. Pause. Back at the brownstone, I dodged a delivery boy who looked too curious, his cap low. Paranoia? Or another piece of the puzzle? Wolfe, unmoved by my tales of tales, focused on the programme's paper. Saul's report came in. The limited run stock came from Grayson's, and only 3 buyers matched our suspects' profiles: Lang, Voss, and an unknown woman, possibly Lydia. But the real bombshell? The programme's torn edge matched a page from Hargrove's personal diary, locked in his safe. I'd sweet-talked his secretary into opening it, revealing a journal filled with cryptic entries. Betrayed by ambition, the score settles all. Was Hargrove the betrayer, or a victim of his own schemes? By evening, Wolfe orchestrated the classic Nero Wolfe showdown. He summoned the suspects to the brownstone, a stage for truth. Eleanor Voss. Pronunciation Voss. Like boss, with a V arrived first, her fur stole sweeping the floor, her eyes blazing. "This is absurd," she declared. "I was on stage, not poisoning patrons." Emphasis on absurd with a haughty snap. Victor Lang followed, his moustache twitching, protesting his innocence. "Reginald's debts don't make me a killer." Lydia Hargrove, pale and trembling, clutched her handkerchief, whispering, "I only wanted Uncle's love, not his death." Wolfe leaned forward, his voice cutting through the tension. The note, he said, was placed after Hargrove's death, a deliberate misdirection. Emphasis on after with a sharp pause. Gasps echoed. The fingerprint on the programme, Voss's, but from signing autographs earlier. The earring, Lydia's, dropped innocently during her visit. Lang's cyanide. A frame-up planted in his car, Saul confirmed. The room crackled as Wolfe unveiled the diary page, its tear matching the note. Hargrove wrote it himself, he said, a suicide note, staged as murder to ruin his enemies. I jumped in, smelling a twist. "Hold on, boss. The diary's handwriting, it's off." Saul's analysis, fresh from the lab, proved it. The page was forged. The real killer? Eddie Malone, Lydia's musician beau, working with Lang. Motive? Money. Hargrove's blocked shipments ruined Lang, and Eddie wanted Lydia's inheritance. The note, their joint creation, using Hargrove's diary paper to frame Voss. Eddie, it turned out, had access to the Met's refreshment cart, slipping cyanide into the champagne during intermission. Lang supplied the poison, his pest control a lie. Chaos erupted. Voss shrieked. Lang lunged for the door and Lydia sobbed. Inspector Kramer, waiting in the wings, stormed in with cuffs. "Wolfe, you smug bastard," he growled, but his eyes gleamed with grudging respect. The fedora-wearing shadow. Eddie's accomplice, a hired thug now in custody thanks to Saul's tale. Pause. Justice was served, dear listener, but not without Wolfe's flair. But wait, something nagged me. That diary entry, the score settles all. Was it just a metaphor or a hint at a deeper secret? A wartime code in Tosca's score, perhaps, tied to Hargrove's smuggling. Wolfe's eyes met mine, a flicker of intrigue. Pause. The curtain hadn't fully fallen. Your turn, dear listener. Did we miss a clue? Was there another hand behind the note, or is the Tosca score hiding something bigger? Drop your theory in the comments and tell me. How would you have cornered Eddie and Lang? Scene transition. Triumphant orchestral swell, fading to a single violin note. Chapter 5. The Final Bow. The brownstone was calm again, like the city after a thunderstorm, though the air still hummed with the aftershock of justice served. Nero Wolfe, settled in his yellow armchair, was back to his orchids, fussing over a cattleya that dared to droop. I sat at my desk, typing the case report, the clack of my typewriter a rhythm as familiar as Fritz's breakfasts. Reginald Hargrove's murder, cyanide in his champagne, a forged note calling him betrayer, had been cracked wide open. Victor Lang, pronunciation Lang, rhymes with song, and Eddie Malone, Lydia Hargrove's musician beau, were in cuffs, their scheme of greed and vengeance laid bare. But as I typed, a nagging itch told me the stage wasn't fully lit. The showdown in Wolfe's office had been a spectacle. Lang, his moustache wilting under pressure, had cracked first, cursing Eddie for botching the note's forgery. Eddie, all slick hair and bravado, tried to pin it on Lydia, but her tears, genuine, Saul Panzer confirmed, cleared her. The note torn from Hargrove's diary was their masterpiece, meant to frame Elena Voss, pronunciation Voss, like boss with a V for a scorned lover's revenge. Lang supplied the cyanide, Eddie spiked the champagne during intermission, and a hired thug, the fedora-wearing Shadow, kept watch. Inspector Kramer, grudgingly impressed, hauled them off, muttering, "Wolfe, you're a damn nuisance!" Emphasis on damn nuisance with a gruff, exasperated tone, but the diary's cryptic entry, the score settles all, stuck in my craw. Wolfe, sipping beer, had dismissed it as Hargrove's flair for drama, but I wasn't so sure. I'd slipped back to the Met that morning, poking through the orchestra pit with Tommy the stagehand. He'd found a programme, Hargrove's overlooked by Kramer's boys, with a faint pencil mark, a sequence of musical notes from Tosca's score scribbled in the margin. A cipher? I brought it to Wolfe, who raised an eyebrow. Curious, Archie. A wartime code, perhaps, tied to Hargrove's imports. Pause. The black market angle, South American antiquities, maybe secrets for the wrong side, hadn't fully unravelled. I hit the streets again, chasing the cipher. A musicologist friend, Professor Klein, pronunciation Klein like line, decoded the notes, a pattern matching a wartime smuggling signal used by black market runners. Hargrove, it seemed, wasn't just importing vases, he was moving coded messages, possibly for profit, possibly under duress. Lang's ledger, which I'd swiped from his warehouse, confirmed it. Shipments marked special, aligned with the cipher's dates. But here's the twist. The diary's final entry, in Hargrove's true hand, hinted he'd planned to expose the ring, naming Lang as a traitor. Had Hargrove been the betrayer, or was he betrayed by his own ambition? Back at the brownstone, I laid it out for Wolfe. Lang and Eddie killed to cover their tracks, I said, but the cipher points to a bigger game, someone above, them. Wolfe's eyes gleamed, a rare spark. Indeed, Archie. The thug in the fedora, his employer remains in shadow. Saul's tale had nabbed the thug, a lowlife named Joey Russo, but Joey clammed up, refusing to name his boss. Wolfe leaned back, fingers steepled. The case is closed, yet the symphony plays on. A conductor, perhaps, lurks beyond our stage. Fritz served dinner, roast pheasant, a wartime luxury, and Wolfe, briefly distracted, praised the sauce. I grinned, recalling a case in 42 when a smuggler's tip saved my skin during a blackout. "This feels like that," I said. "A loose thread." Wolfe grunted, non-committal, but I knew he'd filed it away. The Met's lights were dim, but New York's underbelly never slept. Inspector Kramer dropped by, his cigar a smouldering truce flag. "You got lucky, Wolfe," he growled, but he left with Hargrove's programme, promising to chase the cipher. I doubted he'd crack it. Wolfe's brain was the real codebreaker. As I typed the final report, Lydia Hargrove called, her voice steady now. "Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. I'm free of Uncle's shadow." I wished her luck, hoping Eddie's betrayal hadn't broken her. The brownstone settled into its rhythm. Wolfe with his orchids, Fritz in the kitchen, me at my desk. But that Tosca cipher nagged, a melody unresolved. Was there a mastermind behind Lang and Eddie, pulling strings from a penthouse or a war-torn port? Pause. Justice had been served, dear listener, but mysteries like New York never truly sleep. Your turn. What's the loose thread you'd pull? The cipher's mastermind, a hidden motive, or something in Tosca's score? Drop your theory in the comments and tell me, where should Wolfe and I go next? A foggy London dock, a Victorian manor, or a custom spot you dream up? Hit that like button, subscribe for more Nero Wolfe tales, and share your ideas. Until next time, keep your wits sharp. Good night. Chapter 7. Echoes of the Score. The brownstone was a fortress of calm, but my nerves were jittery, like a saxophone player on his fifth coffee. It was a week since we'd closed the Hargrove case. Victor Lang, pronunciation Lang, rhymes with song, and Eddie Malone were cooling their heels in jail, their cyanide scheme exposed. The note, "The final act ends tonight." Betrayer was their forgery, meant to frame Elena Voss, pronunciation Voss, like boss, with a V. But that Tosca cipher, musical notes scribbled in Hargrove's program, kept me up nights. Was it a smuggling code, tied to Hargrove's black market deals? And who was the fedora-wearing thug's boss the shadow Joey Russo wouldn't name? Wolfe, back in his orchid rooms, was pruning a dendrobium with surgical precision. "Archie," he rumbled, "you're restless. The case is closed." Emphasis on closed with a dismissive drawl. I wasn't buying it. Over Fritz's lamb chops I pressed him. "That cipher, boss, it's a loose end." Hargrove was moving more than vases, secrets, maybe for the wrong side. Wolfe's eyes flickered, a rare sign he was listening. "Pursue it then," he said, "but tread lightly. Wartime shadows are treacherous." I hit the streets, starting at the Met. The Opera House was quieter now, its velvet seats empty, but the air held a ghost of Tosca's passion. Tommy, the stagehand, was polishing brass rails, his eyes darting. "Mr. Goodwin," he whispered, "after you left I found this." He handed me a crumpled ticket stub marked with the same Tosca notes as Hargrove's program, dated for tomorrow's performance. A signal for a drop? I pocketed it, my pulse quickening. The cipher wasn't dead, it was alive and ticking. Next stop, Professor Klein, pronunciation Klein, like line, the musicologist who'd decoded the cipher as a smuggling schedule. Over coffee in his cluttered office, he traced the notes to Tosca's actu aria, Visidate. "The rhythm," he said, "matches a code used by black market runners. Dates, times, drop points." He pointed to a date in the cipher. October 26th, 1944. Tomorrow. A meet Archie, somewhere at the Met. I thanked him, dodging a black sedan idling outside. That shadow again? My hand brushed the 38 in my coat. Back at the brownstone, I dug into Hargrove's ledger, swiped from Lang's warehouse. A shipment marked "Special" aligned with tomorrow's date, coded as Met Box 12. A rendezvous, but for who? I called Saul Panzer, who'd been tailing Joey Russo's contacts. "Archie," Saul said. "Joey's been seen with a dame, tall red hair, calls herself Clara Wren, pronunciation Wren, like pen. She's tied to a club on the Lower East Side, a front for smugglers. Clara Wren, our mastermind. I needed to see her in action." That night, I slipped into the Blue Note, a smoky dive where jazz mingled with wartime whispers. Clara Wren was there, a vision in emerald silk, her red hair a beacon. She moved like she owned the room, whispering to a man in a fedora, not Joey, but familiar. I edged closer, catching her words. "Box 12, tomorrow. The score settles it." My heart skipped. The cipher, the drop. It was her show. But as I turned to leave, a heavy hand gripped my shoulder. "Goodwin," a gravelly voice hissed. "You're in deep." Pause. I spun, but the man melted into the crowd, leaving only a matchbook with the Blue Notes logo and a Tosca note scribbled inside. Back at the brownstone, I laid it out for Wolfe. The ticket stub, the cipher's date, Clara Wren's name. Wolfe's fingers steepled, his eyes half closed. A conductor, Archie, orchestrating from the shadows. This Clara Wren, she's no mere player. He examined the matchbook, noting the ink matched the note's rare brand. "Arrange a meeting," he said. "Tomorrow at the Met, Box 12. The next evening I staked out Box 12, the Met's lights, casting eerie shadows. Clara Wren arrived, alone, clutching a program. I signalled Saul, hidden in the wings, and approached. "Miss Wren," I said, flashing my best grin. "Care to explain the score?" Her eyes narrowed, but before she could bolt, Inspector Kramer's boys swarmed in. Saul's tip had reached them. Clara's purse held a coded ledger, matching Hargrove's, and a vial of cyanide. The mastermind, caught in her own trap. Wolfe, briefed later, nodded approval. The cipher, he said, was her baton, directing Hargrove's death to protect her network. Clara confessed under Kramer's grilling. Hargrove planned to expose her smuggling ring, so she'd hired Lang and Eddie, using the betrayer note to muddy the waters. Justice served with a side of Wolfe's smugness. Pause. But one question lingered. Was Clara the final note, or was another conductor out there? Your turn, dear listener. Did Clara act alone, or is a bigger shadow lurking? What's the one clue you'd chase next? The matchbook, the ledger, or Tosca's score? Drop your theory in the comments and tell me, where should Wolfe and I hunt next? A wartime port, a Victorian crypt, or a spot you dream up? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep the mystery alive. Good night. Chapter 8. The Unseen Conductor. The brownstone was a fortress, but the air crackled with unfinished business. It was 10 days since Reginald Hargrove's murder shook the Met, and though Victor Lang, pronunciation Lang, rhymes with song, Eddie Malone, and Clara Wren, pronunciation Wren like pen, were behind bars, the Tosca cipher, a sequence of musical notes tied to a smuggling code, kept me restless. One date in the cipher, October 30th, 1944, loomed tomorrow, and Clara's silence about her boss left a question mark bigger than Wolfe's ego. Over Fritz's veal cutlets, I pushed Nero Wolfe, who was nursing a beer like it was fine wine. "Boss," I said, "that cipher's still singing. Someone's calling the shots." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Indeed, Archie. A conductor remains unseen. Pursue it." Emphasis on pursue it, with a commanding tone. I started at the Blue Note, the Lower East Side club where Clara had whispered about Box 12. The joint was alive with jazz and cigarette smoke, the kind of place where secrets traded hands like poker chips. The bartender, a wiry guy named Sal, remembered Clara's regular, a man with a silver cigarette case, always in a charcoal suit, no fedora this time. "Calls himself Mr. Grey," Sal muttered. "Big shot, maybe government." Pronunciation, Grey. Standard. I pressed for more, but a drunk at the bar spilled his gin, cutting us off. As I left, I spotted a glint in the alley, a silver case, dropped with a monogram, AV, a new player or a careless thug. Next, I revisited Professor Klein. Pronunciation Klein like line, the musicologist who'd cracked the Tosca cipher. In his office, cluttered with sheet music, he traced the October 30th code to Tosca's acti finale, E lucevan le stelle. "It's a drop signal," he said. "Likely Pier 17, midnight tomorrow. The notes and code are crate number 47. I thanked him, dodging a black sedan outside. Same one from Clara's trail? My 38 felt heavier in my coat. At Pier 17, I scouted the docks, where crates loomed like tombstones. Crate 47 was unmarked, but a faint Tosca melody scratched inside, like a phonograph. A trap, or a clue. I backed off, not keen on meeting a knife in the dark. Back at the brownstone, Saul Panzer called with a lead. "Archie, Mr. Gray's real name, Anthony Vesper. Pronunciation, Vesper, like whisper. Ex-diplomat, now running a shipping firm tied to Hargrove's imports." Vesper's office was on Park Avenue, all marble and smugness. I bluffed my way in, posing as a client. Vesper was lean, 50-ish, with eyes like a hawk and that silver case on his desk. "Hargrove," he said, cool as ice. "A partner, nothing more." But his ledger, glimpsed while he took a call, listed crate 47 marked classified. Smuggling secrets, or worse. That evening I tailed Vesper to the Met, where Tosca was playing again. He slipped into box 12 alone, clutching a program. I signalled Saul, watching from the orchestra, and crept closer. Vesper met a dock worker, scarred hand, no name, passing a folded note. I couldn't grab it, but the dock worker's coat bore a pin, a tiny eagle, like wartime contraband runners wore. As Vesper left, he spotted me, his eyes locking on mine. "Goodwin," he hissed, "you're out of your depth." Pause. I held my ground, but he vanished into the crowd, leaving a matchbook, Blue Note logo, another Tosca note inside. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe examined the matchbook, its ink matching the original betrayer note. "Vesper," he said, "is the conductor. His network used Hargrove, then silenced him when he turned. I laid out the clues: the cipher's peer drop, Vesper's ledger, the eagle pin. Wolfe's fingers steepled. Arrange a trap, Archie. Pier 17, midnight. Kramer must be there. I called Inspector Kramer, who grumbled but agreed, his cigar practically sparking with annoyance. Midnight at Pier 17 was a fog-choked maze. Saul and I staked out crate 47, Kramer's boys hidden nearby. Vesper arrived, with the scarred dockworker carrying a satchel. As they opened the crate, filled with coded documents not antiques, Kramer's men pounced. Vesper drew a pistol, but Saul's quick tackle saved the day. The documents, wartime intelligence sold to the highest bidder. Vesper's network, with Clara as his lieutenant, had used the Tosca cipher to coordinate drops. Hargrove's death was a clean-up when he threatened to talk. Kramer, hauling Vesper away, tossed me a rare nod. "Tell Wolfe he's still a pain," he growled, emphasis on pain with a grudging tone. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe sipped beer, satisfied. "The score is settled, Archie, for now." But a final cipher note found in Vesper's satchel hinted at one more drop. Undated, unsigned. Pause. Was another player out there, or was this the final note? Your turn, dear listener. Who's behind that last cipher? A rogue agent, a double-crossed ally, or someone new? Drop your theory in the comments and tell me, where's our next mystery? A wartime spy nest, a foggy London alley, or your wildest idea? Hit that like button, subscribe, and keep the intrigue alive. Good night. Chapter 9. The Silent Aria. The brownstone was a sanctuary, but the Tosca cipher's final note, undated, unsigned, found in Vesper's satchel, had me pacing like a caged tiger. 2 weeks had passed since Hargrove's murder shook the Met, and though we jailed Lang, pronunciation Lang, rhymes with song, Malone, Wren, pronunciation Wren, like pen, and Vesper, pronunciation Vesper, like whisper, the conspiracy felt unfinished. That cipher, tied to Tosca's Elucevant Listel, had led us to wartime smuggling, coded documents, not antiques, but one name was missing. Over Fritz's duck à l'orange, I prodded Wolfe, who was inspecting a beer like it held the answers. "Boss," I said, "someone's still out there directing this opera." Wolfe's lips twitched. "A silent aria, Archie. Find the singer." Emphasis on find the singer with a commanding tone. I started at the Met, where Tosca's echoes lingered like ghosts. Tommy, the stagehand, was sweeping the balcony, his hands shaky. "Mr. Goodwin," he whispered. "I heard whispers after Vesper's arrest. A woman, not Clara, at the stage door last night. She asked about crate 47. He described her, petite, veiled, with a voice like velvet. A new player? I scoured the stage, finding a dropped glove, black silk embroidered with a tiny star. A clue, or a prop from Puccini's drama? My gut said the former. Next, I revisited Professor Klein, pronunciation Klein, like line, the musicologist who decoded the cipher. In his office, littered with wartime newsreels, he studied the final note scribble. "It's incomplete," he said, "but the rhythm points to a new drop. Grand Central Station tomorrow 2 a.m. The star motif in Tosca's score suggests a code word. Stella." I nodded, slipping out as a grey coupe idled across the street. Not the black sedan, but close enough to raise my hackles. My 38 stayed close. Grand Central was my next stop, its marble halls buzzing despite the late hour. I staked out the clock tower, watching for a veiled woman. At 1:55 a.m. she appeared, petite, veiled, clutching a leather case. I tailed her to a locker, where she whispered Stella to a porter. He handed her a package, but before I could move, a man with a scarred cheek, Vesper's dock worker, grabbed her arm. They vanished into the crowd, leaving a torn ticket stub marked with a Tosca star. I pocketed it, dodging a passerby who smelled of clove cigarettes, a scent from the blue note. Back at the brownstone, Saul Panzer called with a lead. "Archie, the woman's name is Sylvia Durant, pronunciation Durant, like ant with emphasis. Runs a gallery uptown tied to Hargrove's imports. I hit her gallery, a sleek space filled with South American artifacts. Sylvia was 40, sharp-eyed, with a star pendant matching the glove's embroidery. "Hargrove," she said, cool as a martini. "A client, nothing more." But her desk held a coded ledger, its dates aligning with the cipher's drops. When I mentioned Stella, her smile faltered, a crack in the facade. That night I tailed Sylvia to the Blue Note where clove cigarette smoke hung thick. She met a man in a grey suit, not Vesper but familiar, with a star-shaped cufflink. The drop's secure, she whispered, but Goodwin's close. I ducked behind a pillar, heart pounding as the man scanned the room. His cufflink matched the glove star, a syndicate signature. I slipped out, but a clove-scented shadow followed, his footsteps heavy. I lost him in an alley, finding a dropped note. Stella. Terminate interference. Pause. The game was deadly now. Back at the brownstone, I laid out the hall. Glove, ticket stub, ledger, note. Wolfe examined the stub, its ink matching the ciphers. Sylvia Durant, he said, is the final conductor. Her gallery masks a network Hargrove fed, then threatened to expose. I added, she's tied to the star symbol, glove, pendant, cufflink. Wolfe nodded. Set a trap, Archie. Grand Central tomorrow. Kramer must be ready. At 2 a.m, Grand Central was a fog of whispers. Saul and I watched Locker 47, Kramer's boys in plain clothes. Sylvia arrived, veiled with the grey-suited man. They opened the locker, revealing microfilm, wartime secrets, not art. As they turned, Kramer's men struck, but Sylvia's accomplice fired a shot, grazing Saul. I tackled him, the microfilm skidding across the floor. Sylvia screamed, "You'll ruin everything!" But Kramer cuffed her, his cigar glowing like a victory flare. The microfilm confirmed it. Sylvia's gallery funneled intelligence, with Hargrove as a reluctant mule until he rebelled. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe sipped beer, satisfied. The aria is silent, Archie. Sylvia was the voice. Pause, but the note's final line, terminate interference, nagged me. Was there another star in the syndicate? Kramer took the microfilm, muttering, "Wolfe, you're a damn genius." Emphasis on damn genius with grudging respect. Your turn, dear listener. Is Sylvia the last note, or is another star out there? What's the clue you'd chase? The microfilm, the star symbol, or Tosca's score? Drop your theory in the comments and tell me, where's our next mystery? A wartime safe house? A Victorian seance? Or your wildest idea? Hit that like button, subscribe, and keep the intrigue alive. Good night. Chapter 10. The Last Crescendo. The brownstone was a haven, but the Tosca cipher's final code, undeciphered, tucked in Sylvia Durant's microfilm, had me wired like a Times Square neon sign. 3 weeks after Hargrove's murder, we dismantled a smuggling ring. Lang, pronunciation, Lang, rhymes with song, Malone, Wren. Pronunciation, Wren, like pen, and Durant. Pronunciation, Durant, like ant, with emphasis were locked up, their wartime racket exposed. But that code, tied to Tosca's elusive Listel, hinted at one last drop, and Sylvia's silence about her boss left a gap wider than the Hudson. Over Fritz's coq au vin, I pressed Wolfe, who was cradling a beer like a rare orchid. "Boss," I said, "there's a maestro out there still conducting." Wolfe's eyes gleamed. "A crescendo, Archie. Find the source." Emphasis on find the source with a commanding tone. I started at Grand Central where Sylvia's arrest had left whispers. A porter, nervous as a rookie on opening night, slipped me a tip. A man in a navy overcoat, seen with Sylvia, had asked about Locker 47 post-arrest. Called himself Mr. Cole, he said, had a voice like gravel. Pronunciation, Cole, standard. I scoured the station, finding a dropped pen, silver, engraved with LC. A clue or a commuter's loss? My gut leaned toward the former. Next, I hit Professor Klein's office. Pronunciation Klein, like line, where sheet music spilled like wartime rations. He studied the cipher's final code, its rhythm incomplete. "It's a variation," he said, pointing to a drop at the Hudson Piers November 1st midnight. The code word, loose, from the aria. I nodded, slipping out as a navy sedan, not grey, not black, idled nearby. My 38 felt like an old friend. At the piers, I scoped crate 19, marked with a star like Sylvia's pendant. A faint hum came from inside. A radio signal? I backed off, spotting a navy overcoat in the fog. "Mr. Cole?" Saul Panzer called with a lead. "Archie, Mr. Cole is Leonard Cole." Pronunciation, Cole. Standard, a customs official with ties to Hargrove's imports. Cole's office was downtown, all oaken secrets. I bluffed my way in, posing as a reporter. Cole was 55, grizzled, with a gravelly voice and that silver pen on his desk. "Hargrove," he said, lighting a clove cigarette. "Same scent as Sylvia's shadow. A business acquaintance." But his filing cabinet, glimpsed during a staged cough, held a coded manifest, dates matching the cipher's drops. When I mentioned loose, his hand twitched. A tell. That night I tailed Cole to the Met, where Tosca played its final run. He entered box 10, alone with a programme. I signalled Saul, stationed in the balcony, and crept closer. Cole met a woman, tall, silver hair, star-shaped brooch. "Loose is set," she whispered. "Goodwin's too close." I froze, but the woman's brooch matched the crate's star, a syndicate emblem. As they left, Cole dropped a note. "Loose. Neutralise." Pause. My pulse raced. I was the target now. Back at the brownstone, I laid out the hall. Pen, manifest, note, star motif. Wolfe examined the note, its ink matching the betrayer brand. "Leonard Cole," he said, "is the crescendo. His customs role cloaks the syndicate's final act." I added, "The woman's brooch ties to Sylvia's star. Same network." Wolfe nodded. "Set a trap, Archie. Pier 19, midnight. Kramer must be there." Midnight at the piers was a fog-drenched trap. Saul and I watched Crate 19, Kramer's boys hidden in the shadows. Cole arrived with the silver-haired woman identified by Saul as Margaret Holt. Pronunciation, Holt, standard, a shipping heiress. They opened the crate, revealing radio equipment, wartime tech for coded transmissions. Kramer's men struck, but Holt pulled a derringer, firing wildly. I dove, tackling Cole as Saul grabbed the crate. The equipment confirmed it. Cole's syndicate, with Hargrove as a pawn, sold secrets to foreign buyers. Holt was his silent partner, using Tosca's score to signal drops. Kramer cuffed them, his cigar a glowing beacon. "Wolfe, you're a damn menace," he growled, but his grin betrayed respect. Emphasis on damn menace with grudging admiration. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe sipped beer, smug. "The score is silent, Archie, for now." But a final manifest page found in Cole's pocket listed an untraced drop. Coded, unsigned. Pause. Was another star in the shadows? Your turn, dear listener. Is Cole the final note, or is another maestro out there? What's the clue you'd chase? The manifest, the star brooch, or Tosca's code? Drop your theory in the comments and tell me, where's our next mystery? A wartime bunker, a Victorian opera house, or your wildest idea? Hit that like button, subscribe, and keep the intrigue alive. Good night.